Hello and welcome to That's So Craven, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. This is Dave and this is After Dark, streaming live on X and YouTube. And tonight we're going to be discussing that little old game this Saturday, the FA Cup quarter-final, Fulham versus Crystal Palace at Craven Cottage. I could barely get that sentence out without feeling nervous. But we're going to try and look forward to it tonight, and I'm desperate to talk about it. So before we start, anyone watching along live tonight, please send us in your questions and we'll try and answer those during the show. And joining me, as always, we've got the Thursday night MVP. It's Fulham legend. It's Mary Southgate. How you doing, Mary?
Hi, how are you? Gosh, it feels like, I know we did a podcast last week, but it does feel like it's been a while. But I feel like it's because we haven't had a game. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to talking all things Fulham today. It gave me goosebumps when you mentioned the match on Saturday a minute ago. So, it'll be good, goosebumps and nerves. So it'll be good to debrief a little bit about it. And yeah, I just feel like I've missed football this last. I know there's been England playing, I've watched some of that, but it's just not the same. So I'm looking forward to looking forward to chatting all things and see how we get on.
This is it. And right, what a treat we've got for you today. I mean, not only have we got Fulham legend Mary Southgate, but we've got Fulham social media legend, the Cottage Tactico himself. We've got Kish here this evening. So Kish, absolutely thrilled to have you. Thanks for coming on the show. How are you, sir?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you too. I feel like the nervous energy is so overwhelming that I just got to keep on doing things. Otherwise, I'm going to sort of be in a corner hyperventilating too much before Saturday. And look, it's lovely to be on with you and exciting to be on with Mary. Like you said, a proper Fulham legend who can tell me if any of the nerdy stuff I talk about online has any actual relevance to playing football, which she did really well and I'm useless at. So that could be fun.
Brilliant. Well, look, just to make you feel a little bit at home, Kish, I thought I'd steal the opening feature from Fulham Focus, right? So this is your first After Dark, okay? And that puts you on par with a few Fulham players who've only made one appearance, okay? One of them was Pascal Zubabula, which I loved. And the other one was one of the Craig Klein stat signing master strokes, and that was Adil Chihi. And I thought that's got to be the one.
That's got to be the one.
Adil Chihi?
I do. But also, like, there's a good vibey names for one appearance. I thought there'd be people no one could ever remember. By the way, Sam will be made up that you've pulled that feature out. He loves his spreadsheet with appearances and Fulham appearances. That's his favourite.
Yeah, it's just for one night only, Sam. Don't worry, there'll be no more plagiarism of the show. It was just to make Kish feel welcome and make Kish feel at home. So yeah, look, Crystal Palace this Saturday. As we've all said, feeling a little bit anxious about it because it's just such a massive game. And I thought before we kind of talk about the FA Cup match, it'd be good to kind of reflect back on the two games we've already played against Crystal Palace this season. So the first being the game back in, it's got to be November at Selhurst Park, where I remember ahead of the game, it felt like a good time to play Palace. They hadn't started this season particularly well, and they were fraught with injuries, and they kind of had a little bit of a makeshift lineup. So we really took advantage of that, I thought, on the day. Remember going in at half-time 1-0 through an Emil Smith-Rowe. Great goal, actually. Great run and finish from Emil Smith-Rowe. And a mistake, I remember, by Lacroix and Joachim Andersen's replacement. Who apparently is so much better than than Andersen, but that day he had a poor moment in that first half. I mean, what's your memories of that one, Kish? And it's a good one to think back on because it was a nice away win.
Yeah, it was a nice away win. I didn't go this year. I went to the one last year that was 0-0 and got bored out of my mind. But it was good to see us get the win. But yeah, I feel like the mind plays tricks on you. I can't, because we got done by them more recently, I can't work out if we were very good that day or not, or whether we got a bit lucky with the injuries and the mistakes and the rest of it. And I sort of remember I was quite grateful when Wilson got that second goal, because I was starting to get a bit nervy watching it go on. So yeah, it feels like about a million miles away, that game now, doesn't it? I mean, it feels like a different season almost. Even for our team and our players and our setup, we seem to have come a fair way since then as well. And Palace obviously even more.
Yeah, for sure. Mary, what's your memories of that one? I think it was around the time we got the win against Brentford at home. It might have even been the next match. And yeah, I remember that second half we had, it took for Palace to get a red card really for us to really get hold of the game. And from then on, we could have been more really. We had a couple disallowed. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I think it does the same as Kish said. It feels like so long ago now. And then just remembering that Brentford game, that is just always going to be a vibe. But yeah, I think we took a while to get going and work out sort of their setup in that game. And then, like you said, they got the red card and it just gave us that platform to push on a bit more. It's always good being 1-0 up, but I just always feel a bit nervous, like shaky about it. So yeah, when we could go and get that second, obviously that's at that time in the game, you'd like to think it kills the game, which yeah, last 15, 20 minutes, I'd say we had control of that game. Yeah. But I find it really interesting that we had a very similar lineup for the home game, other than I think, was it Nelson played in the away game? Obviously, like, he's been out injured, but Nelson played, and I think AP played instead of Lukic in that 8 role. Very similar lineup, but such a different game when we played them at home. So yeah.
Kish, what do you make? Was it very much the case that it was a depleted Palace side and we just took, our opportunities on the day and, helped out by the red card? Or was there anything you noticed, if you can recall, tactically in that game that helped us and, enable us to get on top?
I think it's more what there wasn't there from Palace. And I don't just mean from a personnel perspective, but like, and we'll come to the more recent game later, which I've done a YouTube video on for tomorrow as well in lots of detail. But like, basically, what Palace did more recently to us is one of the most complete out of possession performances I've seen in the league this season. They were unreal off the ball. And I just think when you've got injuries, when your team isn't in a great place, the level of aggression with which they were able to come at us more recently just wasn't there. And I think that Fulham are a side that when we start to create chances and we start to get a bit of a foothold in the game, we tend to really enjoy ourselves and that momentum builds. Whereas when a team sort of starts to stifle us, starts to get in our faces a bit, starts to disrupt some of the nice football we want to play, we find it really hard. And I just think Palace were a completely different animal between those two games.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the other thing that I remember on the day, obviously the decisions went our way. So Palace got the red card and obviously we took advantage of that. Whereas, moving into the home game was a very kind of different kind of performance. I remember fans feeling particularly frustrated at the referee. And I wondered how much of a factor, that was. One game we've kind of taken advantage of those decisions. And the other game, it's got on top of us and it's affected, I think, the kind of mood in the stadium, the mood amongst the team. And I don't know, does anyone have any views on if they felt that contributed in the second game?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're spot on. The first one, the away game, the ref was definitely better decisions for us, which definitely affects you as a fan and as a player. Like the home game, you could feel the tension amongst the fans. Like we were so angry because it was just constantly, in our opinion, going wrong, and it was unfair. And it was just like, really, like, are you not calling that again? And Palace were clever. They were trying to break up our play. They were trying to slow us down, and they were clever at what they were doing. But the ref just didn't have hold of that, and it really does affect you. I think it affects the energy that we're giving off as fans. We like in it for every team and wherever you're playing, the fans are a massive contribution. You should have that home advantage, but it creates an atmosphere, and the energy we're giving off is gonna have an impact on the players. It shouldn't, but it does. So yeah, I would say unfortunately the ref did have an impact on that game, and we were just we couldn't get out our heads as players as well. I'd say they just we just got caught up in it, I think, too much, and then that's where our energy's going rather than our performance, and I suppose it just needs that player on the pitch as well to sort of calm it down and get hold of it again and refocus everyone. But yeah, I'd say it sort of got away from us as fans and players that game.
Yeah, just interesting you say that, because I've mentioned this before, where I felt that, you know, sometimes when games where the decisions aren't going our way, we don't really react very well to that as a team. I think when you do thinking back all the way back to that Man United game at Old Trafford, where we kind of capitulated, we get very wound up when decisions go our way. Marco gets very wound up, and the fans kind of, you know, I think he kind of sets the tone. You know, the fans know that he's frustrated. You hear the whole Marco's right, the refs are shy, start coming out, and I really hope we can avoid that on Saturday, because I just don't think I've ever remember a situation where we've been frustrated and on top of the ref like that and managed to get a result out the game. Kish, how do you feel about that? About that situation?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, because I was interested to hear Mary talk about it from the perspective of being a player as well, because it feels like some teams and some stadiums, when the fans get angry, that sort of creates this like siege mentality, and you feel like they're stronger for it. And I've never felt that way in H5. Like when we start getting annoyed at the referee, I start to slightly worry. So I think there's definitely something in that. I mean, on the refs, I think it's quite interesting. I think Palace fans absolutely hate the ref that we've got this weekend, and we really don't like the VAR. So like everything else going into this game, it really is 50-50.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Yeah, it's Darren England, I think. He last did us against Villa, actually the game that we lost at home. But we kind of missed a penalty in that first half, so you know we kind of cost ourselves opportunities in that one. But yeah, you're right. On VAR is the same ref that refereed, I believe, the Palace home game, the one that we all got very frustrated with. Is that correct? I think it is.
I know that it's Rob Jones, isn't it? I know that we don't like
Yeah.
him. I can't remember which particular game this season he refereed that we annoyed everyone. But I think Marco made some comments about him after a match as well, which is tasty. At least he's in like the VAR booth. It's not like Marco can have a go at him on the touchline. Like,
Well, that's true.
safe distance.
Yeah, I think it was the Palace home game. I mean, someone will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I feeling it was that one. And there's been other occasions too with Mr. Jones. So yeah, I don't think we've got a major problem with Darren England. If you're listening, Darren, we really like you, we really respect you, and we think you're going to have such a good game on Saturday. And yeah, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the game a few weeks ago. Wow, we were really comfortably beaten at home. It was a real kind of game that I just felt that Glasner won. You know, Glasner won over Marco, and you very rarely say Marco gets out coached and out fought in a game, but I kind of felt that he did. Remember, we started all right. We're knocking on the door, we were pushing and trying to create some chances. We started quite strongly. And then as the half went on, there was a few kind of breaks from Palace in that first half that, you know, just kind of showed us that, oh God, we're in a game here and we've got to be careful. And then we got that sucker punch right before half time with Anderson putting the ball into his own net. Of course, it was going to be Joachim Anderson against his old club, you know. Hell of a narrative there. So yeah, I mean, it was a half as well. We were very frustrated by the referee. Mary, thinking back to that one, I mean, that wasn't a good Saturday afternoon for Fulham, was it?
No, it wasn't. And I feel like it's not often that we don't score a goal. Normally, you can trust us. If we're 1-0 down, you'll still believe like we're going to score. That's absolutely fine. We've got goals in us. No one panic, and I don't think we do panic. But yeah, we didn't even have a shot on target that game. Like it was just mad. But I agree with you. Like we started well. It was a good start, and then we were just out fought. And like I said earlier, they were clever at breaking up our play, trying to slow it down, and then conceding. Was it about 5 minutes before half time? I think with an own goal.
Yeah.
It just changes the atmosphere. It changes psychologically how you're going in, and yeah, it's a gutting time to have conceded, but I think that changed the game as well a little bit. And I think we struggled. They had a back three as far as I remember with the wing backs, and I think we struggled against them with that. Yeah.
What can you say? So, Kish, can you tell us a little bit about your observations from that game? I know we keep making you relive that one. It's probably, what a game to keep having to talk about. But I'd love to hear, because I guess, I thought the effort was there from the players, but something wasn't quite right. I mean, what do you put that down to?
Yeah, I think what Mary said about the game dynamics is really important as well, right? Like, they're not a good side to go 1-0 down to, and the goal was unfortunate, but I think the balance of the game, we were pretty outplayed in general after that early start. But when they go 1-0 up, they're a side that suits playing away from home. Their away record's really good. They're a side that suits being a goal up because they can sit off a little bit and choose when to press, when to spring into that press, and then try and go the other way. So it becomes a much harder task for Fulham at that point. But we've said for a while, like, it's been a theme on my account online, it's been a theme of lots of chats that fans have been having, that we sometimes have a problem against 5 at the back, and like, this was the quintessential, like, 5 at the back, out of possession, young coach who quite likes that system performance from Palace, and it caused us so many problems. And I think because Marco is a coach who likes plan A, like, he likes the way that his side plays. He doesn't like to change things that much. His general opinion is always do plan A better, execute it better, and we'll be okay. I think what happened in that game is really important for us all to understand, and for Marco and the team to understand. And I'm sure they've been looking at it, because you can see what the triggers are for what Palace were doing and why it caused us so many problems. And I think the lessons from that are, they identified, like a lot of teams have identified this season, that if you stop Fulham down their left-hand side, you take away the biggest threat that they pose, and you can sort of take your chances on the right. And when you do that, sometimes Adama Traore turns up in a 10 out of 10 mode, and we can hurt teams. And if he turns up at 2 out of 10 mode, we can't do anything if you take away our left-hand side. And that, for me, is what happened. And in a bit, if you want, I can show you a couple of screen grabs from the game that might be quite useful. But I mean, it felt like it's very rare Marco gets out-thought, and I think he did for this one.
Okay. Should we take a look at these screen grabs? I mean, should I start with number 2, I presume?
Yeah, they're all named wrong because they're just where they're downloaded from my my Canva account, unfortunately. But yeah, number 2 is what it's called in the chat.
Okay.
And I think this is what Glasner did, and I break this down in way more detail on YouTube tomorrow with the tactics board and all the nerdy stuff for people who really do have no life. You can come and join me there. But like, they got numbers out on their right-hand side, and they sat off on their right-hand side in a way that causes us problems. And at no point did they want to go 3 versus 3 with Iwobi, Smith Rowe, and Jedi. They know that Fulham want to try and feed that half space, so that little bit on the edge of the penalty box on the left-hand side. We want to get runners into there. And they were very, very keen to make sure we didn't do that. And in different ways, they made sure they got their numbers out there. And when we get to that position, all we can do is try and reset to the right. There's no way through that, really. And that's where you got that dynamic, which I'm sure you guys can remember. I mean, Mary, like Calvin Bassey and Joachim Andersen basically just passing to each other for vast periods of time, working out how to get through this.
Yeah, and that's all like you said, that's all they can do, because you can't be we're massively overloaded there. And quite rightly from Palace, it's very clever. Like, everyone knows our left is our strongest when we've got Iwobi and Robbo there. So they were very clever doing that. And then, like you said, we have to switch it out. But then if they're blocking those lines and the different passing lanes, then we are stuck, and we're just trying to shuffle them until we can find the gaps. But I think they were clever blocking that off. And I mean, they'll probably do that again. But hopefully Marco's got a plan B and doesn't just stick to the plan A this time.
Yeah.
And Dave, if you talk about, it's like and I'm aware that some people will be listening to this, but we can post this afterwards. It's just basically 5 Palace players out on their right-hand side, stopping us from playing the way that we like to. But every plan has like a weakness, and like Glasner's made a decision here: take away the left-hand side, make them do something else. That creates space elsewhere, right? So you can see here, Sasha Lukic is in quite a lot of space. If we could get the ball back round to him somehow. And if you go to the next pick, you can see what the plan was from Palace there, which is they basically let Mark Gay jump out onto Lukic all game. Like, he's a centre half, And Lukic, yeah, he gets on. He can get as high up the pitch as Smith Rowe sometimes, but he also sometimes is sat next to Sander Berge. And they had absolutely no problem with Gay following all the way up the pitch and winning so many tackles against him. And like the risk here is for them is that if we overload our left-hand side and we bring it back round and you get Lukic and Gay jumps out to try and get him and he misses that tackle, he doesn't engage properly. Lukic is then running into space and he's got Adama 1v1 making a run next to him. And that's really, really dangerous for Fulham. So there's like a gamble there from Glasner. And fair play to Mark Gahey. He absolutely nailed it. And it's the first time in a long time I felt Lukic got bullied in a game. And it was basically a centre-half following around the pitch kicking him.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what I noticed in this one, Kish? And I noticed it actually the week before, because the week before we played really well and beat Nottingham Forest 2-0, was it? 2-0, 2-1? Can't remember. But I noticed on that day that he had Lukic playing quite wide right. You know, we always, when we kind of everyone picks their Fulham team on X and everything, we always put Berger and Lukic next to each other and then a number 10. But it didn't feel like that at all against Forest. It looked more like a free where Berger was in on his own, Lukic was on the right, and Smith Rowe and Iwobi, I believe, were kind of interchanging a little bit and switching on the left. And then we did almost very similar thing against Palace. And I thought, obviously, Glasner's picked up on that because I don't recall us being Lukic playing that wide in other games he's played with Berger this season. Is that an observation? Is that a correct observation, or is this quite a familiar system that was maybe just kind of exaggerated against Forest because of how well we were playing?
I think it's a pattern of play that we've had for a while. We actually, when we went and beat United away last season, we did a bit of that, and Lukic and Reed were rotating out wide, and it was pulling United all over the place. They didn't really know what to do about it, and it let us get out down the right all day long. I thought for Forest, what Marco was trying to do is that he got both the 8s or the 10s quite wide because he quickly realised that Nuno had absolutely no intention of letting any of his defenders jump out onto them. So he just meant that like Morgan Gibbs-White was just running doggies from side to side as players went wide and the rest of it. So look, the thing is you can set, I mean, Mary will know this better because she's actually like played football, but like you can have all these plans and then you go out onto the pitch and your opponent shows you something slightly different and you have to adapt. And I feel like when our left-hand side was taken away and when Gahey was really getting up into Lukic, we seemed to take quite a long time to work out what else we could do on this one. And I think that's something that I'd imagine the manager would want to improve on this time around. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess, you know, the difficulty was that despite, you know, the possession that we had, we obviously, as you've just explained, couldn't use our usual pattern of play, which is progress down the left-hand side. Adama not quite offering what we needed him to on the right. Centre, you know, we've never really been a team that kind of creates too much through the middle of the park, are we? So Raul and ES are pretty isolated, and Palace just offered a huge threat on the counter. And, you know, that's the thing I noticed, the difference between when Fulham play a 5 at the back and Palace do. It's almost like when they're attacking, the Palace fullbacks are like wingers. You know, if a ball goes across the box, the one on the other side seems to be playing like a winger and, you know, crashing the box late. Whereas sometimes I find when we do the 5, our fullbacks are still kind of playing a little bit like a fullback. And it's more of a 5 at the back. And it kind of, I think that's maybe, you know, a bit of a lesson that how to do the system properly. So I thought that was really interesting. And especially the guy at right back, is it Munoz? I mean, what an athlete he is. I mean, he's going to be another player that we need to figure out how we're going to deal with, I guess. And that will be a mix, right, of personnel. And also, you know, I suppose it's like Glasner's done, looking at where our strengths in attack have come from. Is there obvious attacks? Is there obvious kind of patterns in Palace's style of attack that, you know, that Marco might have picked up on, do you think, Kish, that perhaps we could do differently?
I mean, I think that maybe this is me being unfair to Palace. I haven't watched them enough, but I feel like they're much more drilled out of possession than they are in possession, and they give their players a bit of freedom going forward. Okay. There's two sort of dynamics, I think. One is, Munoz is really, really high and wide. Like, he's often their highest player in attack, even though he's playing as a right wing back and quite diligently. Like, you could see he was pretty far back for us earlier in the game. So, like you said, there's got to be a consideration from us as to who's going to be the man helping out there. And I think it means that Alex Iwobi and Ryan Sessegnon are sensible ideas on the left-hand side. Adama Traore and Willian perhaps less so, because that's going to be a lot of work tracking back to keep an eye on Munoz. And then just on the other side, on Palace's left, obviously Eze drops in a bit. And what that tends to do is it draws defenders out and it gives Mateta this little channel in the left-hand side that he can run into. And obviously for us, our right centre-half is Joachim Andersen. I think it happened once early in the recent game. And I thought, oh, God, here we go. But like Mateta running into that space with Andersen worries me a bit. But we've got a centre-half on the call, so maybe we should ask her about it.
Yeah, that's it. Mary, tough day for Andersen, that one.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing that would be really important if he does get drawn out is either Sander Berger drops in and can fill that gap, or Bassi does come across and then we shuffle around a bit. But if we're expecting it, they'll be able to do it better. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to be drawn out too wide, but there are moments if Mateta goes, he'll need to go. But we've got to also try and find ways to block those lines and stop them finding those passes into the gaps. But then you look at it on the other side, where would you rather have those balls, those forward balls? You'd rather have them wide, away from the goal threat, but we just need to be able to cover it. And like Kish was saying, like their right hand side is their strongest, same as it's like our strongest side on the left. So we've got to find a way that we can sort of stop that the best we can and nullify it. But yeah, I think there will be times that Andersen goes across, but we need Berger or Lukic, depending where he is playing. But he has been playing higher recently. Someone's going to have to fill in a little bit more, because we just can't have those gaps when we've got they have got a threatening forward line. They're physical. Munoz is physical. Mateta, we know he's coming back from being out, but he wasn't out for muscle injuries, so he actually should still be pretty fit and good to go. But yeah, it's definitely one to watch.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, let's get on to the FA Cup game then this Saturday. And one thing before we start, I guess it's thinking there's been there'll be a few changes from the Palace team, I would have thought, because Wharton's back right now. So when we last played them at home, he was missing, and he's a fantastic player, so he's going to add something to their midfield. And I just suspect that Lerma will drop out. It seems to be Hughes is the favourite, because he kind of does, I guess, what Lukic has been doing for us all season. He's kind of been breaking up play and getting the tackles in, and he'll let Wharton kind of try and control and dictate the game from the centre. So that's going to be a new challenge for us. You've got the fact that they've got a bigger attendance on the day, pushing them forward. They've got this great away record, as good as anyone in the league since the start of the year. But, I think sometimes, these runs have got to come to an end. That's a positive way of looking at it. And we're going to have to have learned some lessons from last time. So this is the positive, and this is what I'd like to discuss. So from our perspective, okay, we've had an extra game since Palace have last played against Tottenham, which we won. And that's given us all kind of confidence that maybe we're not as bad as home as we thought we were, at home as we thought we were. But also, we've had a lot of players away on international duty since, mixed success. We've had players like Iwobi play probably too much football, and he's played both games. And I think Castagna played one of the games in international duty too. He's another player that we've kind of looked at and thought, is he fully fit? It's taken him a while to kind of build his fitness since Kenny's been out. And I guess before we start, how do we think Fulham will line up? I think Palace, we kind of know, other than question marks over Mateta and his injury, you'd think they'd throw him in for this one. I think Palace, we know, but I think Fulham is more of a conundrum. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's many options, like we say all the time, but I think there really is a few options this time, because AP, what a game against Spurs. He really, he bossed it, and he was absolutely player of the match and had a phenomenal game. So he deserves the start, in my opinion, over Smith Rowe. So I would like to see him in there with Berger and Lukic. Them two are a must already. I'd be incredibly shocked if they were dropped. So yeah, AP. I'd really like to see him coming in number 10. The other question mark for me is Willian coming in again or staying in? I think that would be a positive decision. I think the way he is with his feet, it will just give Palace another option, like another thing to consider, and another way that we can perhaps break them down. Because if they are set in their shape, which they're going to do quite well, we need to be able to move the ball clever. We need to move the ball quicker than we did before. Yes, we had a lot of possession in that home game, even though we lost. But we need to move it quicker, and I think Willian is capable of doing that.
Yeah.
Is he going to last the whole thing? No. And then the other half of that is, if it goes to penalties, we've got to consider who's going to absolutely bang that ball in the back of the net. Willian's penalty against Man United, unreal. Which is the other question mark with Jimenez and Muniz. Like, Jimenez, don't want to jinx it, but you want him taking a penalty.
100%.
But we know that Muniz is a brilliant person coming on with an impact. So, and then Jimenez has had a brilliant international break. So I think it's really tricky to call. I think, what's your thoughts?
Well, I just want to ask you, Kish, on Mary's point about Willian, I think everyone was just so impressed with how he played against Tottenham, right? And, I just don't know how he does it. It's just unbelievable professional. And maybe he's not got the legs that he once did, but he's still got all of the talent and the skill and just the experience to, and especially in these big games, it could be quite important. It is a tricky one, because earlier on you were saying that you felt that he maybe wouldn't be a right pick on the left just because of the threat of the Palace right back, which, very valid point. We've got to deal with that. But actually, from an attacking sense, wouldn't he help us unlock, give us more chances to unlock the Palace backline?
I just love Willian. Do you know what I mean? I love that, the first yards in his head. And I love that so long as he's got that tiny little bit of acceleration to get separation, it doesn't matter how old he is, he's still going to just do stuff. Like, he basically makes playing in the Premier League, like, do you remember the Masters on Sky, where like you get all the old lot out and they just sort of knock the ball about really effortlessly? He makes playing in the Premier League look like that. It's unbelievable. I love him. I worry a bit about Munoz going the other way, but he works really hard. It's just whether he's got the legs in it to do it for 60 minutes from the start. I don't know about that, but you can mitigate that. Like, the thing about Marco is that his teams have changed so often. It's all about combinations, about who complements who does work that lets other people shine. And look, if you're bringing Andreas Pereira back in, who's got a huge work rate, gets stuck in, has got a bit of bite, maybe he can cover for Willian a little bit and help him out there. And like, I think you can probably hear my cat in the background, who seems to think that's a good shout, by the way. Big fan of Willian. But it turns up on every pod I do. And again, if you're thinking about combinations, you do wonder, like, there's some chemistry from those Brazilian boys, from Willian, from Muniz, from Andreas Pereira. I mean, I'm sure it's a coincidence, but it does make me laugh that Muniz has like started bagging goals again once Willian's come back to the club. It's like his dad or something. Maybe there's something, because like Mary was saying, it's such a toss up between someone like Raul and Muniz. Like, there's arguments for how you could do it either way. They'll both play a role in the game. Who does it from the start? Who does it later? Maybe you match it up with combinations. Maybe if it's Andreas, you go with Muniz. Maybe if it's Emil Smith-Rowe, I don't think it will be, you go with Raul. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a really, really tough one, and there's so many things to take into account. My standard line for Marco is just always expect fewer changes than you'd make, because he tends not to make that many. That's not really his thing.
No, he doesn't, does he? He, as you said at the start, he wants to make plan A work well, and we kind of know more or less what his favourite 11 is, more or less. The only thing that's changed slightly is we've noticed that Muniz has had the starts more in the FA Cup so far, including against Man United. And I think the other... I'm not a tactician like you, Kish. I don't always see the game that way. But where I'm coming from with this one is, I'd like to see some different personnel in the attacking up front for Fulham, just because I want something different from the last game. And I kind of think that this could be a long game. It's clearly going to be. It could be a tough game. You know, it could be a game that's really close and edgy, and perhaps even goes to extra time and gives us all a heart attack. And I think, if we are going to be having Muniz starting. You've got Rao coming off the bench, who's there, as Mary said, to potentially take a penalty. I know he's not as good off the bench as Muniz has proved to be, but that was really important at Old Trafford. And I just wonder if that's maybe in Marco's head, particularly after that last Palace game, Rao being really isolated, whereas Muniz is much more physical and can kind of throw his weight around and cause them give them more to think about. And, you know, I just think that's where Marco will go. And look, they're both confident at the moment. They're both scoring goals, whether it be for Fulham or International or for Rao. And it is a bit of a coin toss. It's just which way round you kind of roll the dice, I guess. And but I think from a not looking at it not as a tactician, but just as I want more chaos up there, and I think Muniz would be the man to bring that, which would be my case for him starting. And I think you're right. I think the combination of him and Andreas, you know, that's a familiar one. You know, during Muniz's purple patch, that was very much the partnership. So, but yeah, I think, as you were saying, I think the other position, you know, maybe Willian, maybe it's not Willian, maybe it's Cess. You know, it's hard to say, but I don't. Other than that, I'm not expecting loads of changes. You know. But okay, so we've got to learn some lessons. You know, Palace are Palace. You know, we actually had. I think we had the better of Palace in like the recent history. We've had. I saw a stat earlier where I think in the last 7 we've only lost once to them, which was the last one. So let's take some positives from it. It's always been a close game, but can Fulham at home with the atmosphere, Mary? Can we all turn up on Saturday before the game? I know it's too early to get too boozed up and, you know, lively, but can we bring the atmosphere?
Yes, come on, all Fulham fans listening. It is the white wall. We're going for it. Although it won't, Wembley will raise it even more. But yeah, I'm so ready for it, and I think Fulham are actually going to bring the atmosphere for us as well. To start with, like the flags. I think are they bringing white and black flags?
I believe
they're
so,
putting them in our seats, and they're trying to get us all in by 12. So I think we've got to get behind it, and I do think there is something about an early kickoff where it is a bit of a funky time, let's be honest, but I just feel like that's also just such a fun time to get in there and just be like, right, let's go for this. So yeah, I think it's going to be nervy. I think it's going to be nervy for both teams. I think it'll be very even and quite a tight game, to be honest. I don't think there's going to be loads of goals. But I just hope that we bring our the supporters, we just sing, we get behind the boys fully, stand up for the whole 90 minutes and be wanting to sit down at half time because we've been stood up the whole 45 minutes. But yeah, I think it's going to be one of those we need to celebrate every moment there. Fulham do like a big tackle or we have a really good counter attack, and we've just got to get behind the boys in every moment. So yeah, but I do believe it's going to be a tight game. I would love to see Willian on that pitch though from the start. I just think he'll tear up players in ways that other players don't do really. So I would like to see him on there.
Yeah,
and I do think it might go to extra time and possibly penalties. So I'm not sure how we're going to cope with that one, but I do think that's a potential.
Go on, Kish. How have we got to approach this on Saturday?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's always this chat, isn't there, about Fulham post international breaks? Like, it's always a bit ropey, and there's always this chat about early kickoffs are always a bit ropey, just in general for like all teams. And I wonder if that maybe plays to our advantage a little bit here. Like, hear me out, because yeah, we got a win against Spurs, but like I feel Palace were in much better momentum going into the international break than we were. Like they're on the run of their season. They look so good, and sort of they've not played for a while. We've had this international break. We then got an early kickoff as well. Like they want to dominate physically. They want to win those tackles. They want to sort of start that disruptive play. Maybe if this is sort of like a little bit calm, a little bit disjointed, teams are feeling their way around, they're not taking too many risks, it's not tight and nervy, maybe that's good for us to start with, because then we've got the Craven Cottage factor and the home factor and stuff to boost us on a bit later. But I just wonder if all the things that we usually worry about at the start of the game after an international break for an early kickoff are actually probably bigger problems for Palace in this one than us. And that's what I'm telling myself, at least, so I don't get like too depressed.
Yeah. So look, full of nerves, but I'm going to be bringing the energy. I'm going to be bringing the energy on Saturday, and I just hope it's one of those occasions where if it's a nice day too. I think Fulham always turn up a bit more on a nice day. I think we're a little bit fair weather at home, and I know that's a bit of a wild claim, but I've just noticed the last few times the weather's been good. It just everyone's a bit happier and the fans are a bit more positive. I think it does rub off on the players, so I think we've got a big part to play. Because no doubt Palace will be bringing it in their end. They're a lively bunch anyway, and they've got an extended location for this one, as every away team in the FA Cup do. So we've got to kind of match that and not let them, be the dominant 12th man. And I think if we can do that and really kind of push the players, I could see us starting strongly. I could see Marco getting the players motivated and us fans kind of pushing them, getting the hairs in the back of their neck standing up. And that's what we need to do. And what I think would give us the best chance of approaching this game in the right way. And maybe please getting that first goal, which I think would be really critical. I mean, Kish, you mentioned earlier about Palace. They're not a good team to go 1-0 down to because they can sit in. Obviously, it's always important to get the first goal in a football match. But with Palace, do you think that will give us more opportunities? Because will they come out of their shell and have to, a bit more as the game, and give us more chances? Or do you think they're quite disciplined and they'll just stick to their plan A and, look to try and, counter again later in the game?
I mean, you'd imagine it will draw them out a little bit, and obviously as time marches on, that becomes more of an impact. By the way, I have no idea about Palace's numbers in terms of when they go ahead and when they go behind and stuff like that. I mean, weirdly, we've been quite good this season coming back into games in general, and we've been quite bad at throwing away points once we're leading games in general. But I just think that the way in which they play and the way in which they approach the game, it definitely doesn't sound like one we want to be 1-0 behind in, because I just think it feeds into everything they want to do 100%. And yeah, it's so rare that you go into a game like this where you think it's this well balanced, and it matters obviously as much as it does. Like I think it's quite a rare one. Usually you feel like there's more of a sense of who are the favourites, who'd be going for an upset. And at the end of the day, it's for 3 points and you can go again next week. And there's just none of that here, is there? It's like, it's a completely different beast.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're all a bit nervous, but I want to kind of get a steer from you, hearts and heads. What do we think is going to happen? I mean, are you confident that Fulham can get the win, or are you kind of quite, pessimistic about this one? Kish, you sound very nervous. So I'm worried that you think this could be a tough afternoon for us.
I've just spent like a load of time watching lots of Palace off the ball for a YouTube video. So I think that I've got in my own head. Like they can't play like that all the time. So look, I always try and go optimistic in terms of predictions and the way I go into things. So look, I'd like to think this is a tie. If someone said to you at the start of the season, you can have Palace at home in the quarterfinal of the FA Cup, you'd absolutely bite their hand off. Like it's a proper opportunity for us, and I think we should be seeing it as an opportunity rather than something to lose. So, look, I hope we get over the line. I'm gonna if we want predictions, Dave, I can give you one, but I've got to be consistent because I've already done one this week. So I've got to stay in the same place, otherwise everyone will call me a flip flopper.
Go on then. What did you give us earlier in the week, and we'll stay consistent?
I'm with Mary. I think it's going to be pretty tight. I don't see this being like champagne football from both sides. I think there's a lot on the line. So I could see it being 0-0 or 1-1 at the end of 90 minutes. What I want to put into the universe is that I was saying on Fulham Focus earlier this week, I love the unlikely hero. I just think it's like a really nice thing in football. So like I love that it was Carlos Vinicius, for example, who scored the goal to beat Chelsea at home. I think that's great. So I want to put a Timothy Castagna extra time winner into the universe, because the poor bloke has paid every minute for ages. Most games, somebody says, "Oh, he's not good enough going forward. Oh, he's not good enough going back." I just think he's just such a sort of like steady player. I'd love him to have like a moment at Craven Cottage. So I just want to put that out there. Like, let's say it's 0-0 at 90 minutes, and then Castagna pops up out of nowhere to win it in extra time.
Can you imagine the scenes?
Unbelievable.
And
We're on the
he did get a
pitch.
shot. Yeah, fair enough. See you all there. He did get a shot off on target last week against Spurs.
Oh, he
So
did in the first
you
half,
never
didn't
know.
he?
Yeah, I think that was I think that was the first shot from both teams as well.
Yeah.
On target. So you never know. That would be absolute scenes. And he did have a bit of a rest over the international break, I think. I think he played
He only played one of the
one
games.
game and he was rested for the first one. So which is good because he's played, like you just said, he's played so much and he has been consistently solid for us. He's not Robinson who's like flying to another level, but he's consistently reliable, and I think we've actually need to appreciate that properly as Fulham fans, because he stepped into like he had to follow Tete, but he has been reliable down that side. So yeah, that would be unreal if he scores, and I'm here for it.
There is like a weird little tactical thing as to why I think that's the case as well, because I presume if we go to extra time, they're going to like play Eze until he's sort of the end of the game. Like he's not going anywhere. Like, is he going to want to be tracking back at extra time? Could he be a little bit leggy? Could Castagna just? You never know. You never know.
We've definitely got a stronger bench, I think, and we've proven that this season that we've got game changers off the bench, and it does make you think that if it does go into extra time, we've got more players that could impact the game if it gets a little bit if people do start getting leggy. And Cess is a classic example of that. I mean, Cess coming on it for the extra time, I think we'd all just be, that would be a really exciting substitution. We'd all be backing him to, be the guy to get the winner that sees us over the line. That just sounds very poetic. I think
he was class up at Old Trafford, by the way, Cess, when he came on. Like, because I was up there and like I was starting to get quite ill. I was ill just after that match. I was feeling a bit peaky, and then Cess came on and like he just lifted everything. Like so direct, so positive. Yeah. He was great in the last round. I know it like pales into comparison to what he did off the bench against Spurs, but it's worth putting out there. He was good previously.
This is the thing about Cess, right? He just comes alive in the box. That's why I just love him playing further forward. He's just so composed in the 18-yard box, whether it's an assist or a goal. He just seems to be so confident and relaxed, and that's why I think he'd be a great option later in the game for us if we need a goal on Saturday. So I'm quite excited about that. I think we're more poetic. They're all poetic in different ways, but I'd love Anderson to get on the score sheet and just get a bit of retribution. He got a real hard time from Palace social media after the last game, and it'd be nice for him to get a bit of payback, I think, whether that's the winning goal or a goal in the game or even just a really good performance and handling Mateta. I'd just like the narrative for Anderson to come out positively on Saturday. But yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's going to be edgy. But I do think if it went to extra time and penalties, I think I'd think that we'd have an opportunity just because of the subs that we have and also because of our recent record in penalties. I think we'd go into that with a little bit more confidence. Mary, what's your prediction for this one?
Yeah, and a close game as well. I think maybe 1-1 at the end of 90 minutes. But if Anderson scores the winner, that is also next level, especially after the last game. So yeah, I think it'll be close. I think 1-1. But like you said, we've got a stronger bench, 100%. Like we've got any sub we make, I think, is a really positive step. Yeah. And that's a really strong position to be in. So if Seth comes on, we don't know who's going to be on the bench, but whoever comes on is going to have an impact. So I think that would be really important and like proper fresh legs for the extra time if it goes to that. I do think we need to be aware of like balls over top for Mateta during the game, and that's something that Anderson needs to deal with properly. We have conceded a few goals like that this season. So I do think that's another thing just that we need to be really tight on. But again, if we can be strong against Mateta, is he psychologically ready after what happened against Millwall? But yeah, I think it will be a 1-1 and then extra time and possibly pens.
Yeah, blimey. That's going to be no good for my heart. That will be pretty scary. And I think that's what I'm feeling about this game generally. It's just you know, I just kind of want to get it out of the way, and I hope we're on the good end of it, and we're going to Wembley next, of course. But I don't feel like really looking forward to it, because I'm kind of just feeling a bit anxious. It feels like a massive game. It really does feel like a game that will define our season a little bit. So, you know, fingers crossed, you know, everything we've talked about kind of comes true, and Fulham can do the business. And
Jimenez has been on scoring form over the international break, so hopefully that continues as well.
4 goals didn't he get in 2 games?
Yeah, 2 in each, I think.
Yeah, unbelievable. So,
and talking about your preferred goal scorer of Joachim Andersen, if he does score, he's got to do the watch celebration.
Oh yeah,
just throw it back to the.
We might as well all do it. The fans as well.
Yeah,
that'll be class. I've talked myself into that now. I really want it to happen.
Yeah, that'll be great. It'd be really poetic, because they've given him a bit of stick. You know, even when they signed him, I think there was a little bit. They'll say they think it was a good deal for them, and they ended up getting a better player, and they'll say all that. But I think that was them just looking positively at a situation that they didn't expect. I think Palace. I thought Joachim Andersen was pretty good for Palace alongside Gahey last season and the years before. And you know, for him to move, it was a bit of a surprise when that deal came about. And I do think they've replaced him pretty well. You know, and they have got a younger player in, but I just like him to show his class and show them what they're missing. You know, I think that would be really poetic on Saturday if he could do that, especially after the game a few weeks back. So
I think he'll have a better game. I think the first one was probably tough for him, because he'll have fans that, like Palace fans, that are in his ear, and the first game against Palace, I feel like that probably played a bit of a part to him. So now that that's out of the way, I think he can be a bit calmer in his mind and play his football.
Yeah, no, totally. Okay, so right, let's. I think, you know, we've done a good job of that, but we've got some questions that have come in today from various people on our Discord group and on X. So, Mary, I've pinged them over to you. I wondered if you wouldn't mind reading them out for us, and we can get everyone's view.
Right, this is the first one. It's from Skibby, who I want to know if Skibby actually is going to be able to have his creamed spinach before this game, because he always has it before a home game. But if it's 12:15, I'm not sure if that's happening. So, Skibby, let me know. But question is, if you could relive or see for the first time a game in Fulham's history, which game and why? And this goes to the comments as well. Anyone in the comments, what game would you want to relive or re-see?
And it goes exactly the same as before, right? It's not a redo, because there's some candidates for that, I'll tell you now.
No, there's no redo.
Okay, it's the reliving.
Do you know what jumps to my head? It's Juventus at home.
Yeah, that's my one.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat. That is the answer, isn't it? But as in, I'll try and think of something else, but that's the one.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Oh man, do you know what's really funny about that one? Because obviously we got the goal, and it did feel like a big goal at interim when because we were 3-0 down at the time, right? And Dixon Atuhu got that deflected goal, and I remember thinking at the time, that is the only good point about tonight. We've got one thing to hang on to, is that we could potentially win on away goals. And then going into Craven Cottage, we concede first from an amazing free kick. And I remember just my mum, who sits a few rows in front of me, turned around, and I just went, it's over, you know, it's over. And how wrong was I? I mean, just turned the game after that. And of course, it was helped by the red card to Cannavaro to put them down to 10 men. But Zoltan, Gira and Bobby Zamora were just absolutely unplayable. And stuff dreams were made of when Clint got that chipped winner. So I can't think of any other game that comes close to that. But Kish, come on, give us another one. Can you think?
I'll do like the clever one, which you're going to say doesn't count. But if you could get me to relive in the ground the playoff final against Brentford, so I could actually celebrate the goals properly, that would be class. Because I feel like we all were robbed of that a little bit. And like, if Skibby's smart question means he's found some sort of time travel way to get past COVID and get into that stadium, that would be brilliant. And then just like two games that I just remember feeling amazing at in our modern history is the Luton game at the end of that championship winning season, where like it felt like Mitrovic was just king of the world and he could do whatever he wanted. That was an incredible moment.
Yeah.
And also the Liverpool game, the first game back in the Premier League, where we saw Palhinha for the first time, and I just was like, you know what? I think Marco Silva's got this. I think this is the year. I think we're going to be okay. I really strongly felt that in the ground at the time, and that was a lovely feeling. So there's a few to throw out there.
I also like the Hamburg semi-final when we were singing "Stand Up If You Still Believe." Like that just rings another level. Maybe one to bring out on Saturday. Hopefully, we don't go one goal down, but we can bring out the vocals for that one if we need.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll go for the second question. Is Andreas just apparently refused a new contract and will therefore be sold in the summer? How big a loss will this be with ESR not currently stepping up to the plate?
So this is news, Fulham fan news brought on X today from I think a journalist, perhaps in Brazil, I think. And so it's got to be taken with a little bit of a pinch of salt, I think. But, you know, for the benefit of the question, we'll assume that that is the case. Andreas, I mean, I've talked a lot about Andreas, and I was a big supporter of Andreas, particularly in that first season where he was, you know, brilliant and really, you know, helped transition us from being a championship team to a Premier League team. I thought he played a big part in that transition. Last season, I think his performances in the first half of the season weren't as good. He was coming back after the broken leg, and I don't think he hit the same heights. He had a few moments towards the end of last season, West Ham away being one of them. I think he had, you know, cracking game, and we started to see him perform really well when he managed to get the Brazil call. So he ended the season strongly. This season, he's been forced to play due to injuries to either Berger or Lukic in deeper role in the first half of the season. And I thought he struggled, and I thought he was out of position. And at first I was quite critical about him, but I you know, in hindsight, I think it was really a case of him playing a position that just didn't really suit him as well, his skill set. Since that interview where it all kind of kicked off that he was going to be leaving, it's been a bit of a saga ever since with Andreas. But I think his reaction to that has been brilliant. I think he's kind of really you know, turned his season around off the back of that. And I think his performances have been so much better. And particularly last game, he was clearly man of the match. I mean, he was fantastic. And that was in the 8 as well. So he just, you know, he that form is kind of allowing him now to perform in that deeper role. So, which is great to see too. But he is 29. He is out of contract, I believe, next summer. He's still got value. He's still got quite a lot of value for a player that old. And it might be a sensible time if we can get 20 million plus to release. But oh God, I'm talking so much here, but I just love talking about this. It's such a saga. But in terms of what we would do, yes, ESR's not hit the heights, but we've got Josh King. You know, is it time for Josh King to be given a chance if that was the case? Can't see it under Marco, but you know, I've done enough talking. Kish, what's your view on this one?
I'll keep it very brief. I think if we're not going to give him a big new contract, a serious club cashes out now. Unfortunately, I really like Andreas. I'm one of the Andreas Defence League online, even when he's looked a bit ropey at times. I think he was supposed to shift in, and I think a good Andreas Pereira makes Fulham play much better. When he's on song, we look much better, both on and off the ball. But unless you're going to give him a big new contract, I think you have to move him on this summer, unfortunately. But I think it will be a huge loss. And the last thing I'll just say is that I very nearly had an Andre Fulham shirt, so I'm not believing any more Portuguese language sources when it comes to Fulham transfers ever again.
Yeah,
I do second that though. I think it would be a big loss, and like you said earlier, Kish, like the combinations and the groupings that we're finding on the pitch, the Muniz, AP, and Willian one is something really good. So that would be a big loss. I know ESR is not where we would I suppose, where we expected him to be or where we want him to be or where we believe he can be. But I think he needs a whole season with Marco. He needs a whole season in our setup, a bit like Lukic, people like that. Bassi has absolutely grown. Like lots of these players, the way they are now after having a season or so under Marco, I think that's what ESR needs. So I think ESR will step up next season, and I think AP would be a big loss, especially with the little trio that's going on.
Yeah, agreed. And what's the last one, Mary?
This is a good question as well. I like this one. If you could have one player back from injury, fully fit for the quarterfinal, which would you pick? Tete, Nelson, or Wilson?
Kish, over to you.
That's really hard. That's really, really hard. I mean, I feel like we never quite got to see what exactly Reece Nelson would be for this side other than a live wire. So for me, it's probably between Harry Wilson and Kenny Tete. I think the threat that Eze poses is real, but I think Castagne's probably fine. I think the firepower of Wilson off the bench and also the lift for the fans with Wilson off the bench could be quite useful in a cup tie like this. There's a lot of vibes, isn't there? Like, I feel like in a game like this, it's tight and it's at home. Vibes are real. Like my head says Tete, my heart says Wilson. I think in a cup tie, you go for your heart.
I think they'd both start, Tete and Wilson, if they were fit. So it's a bit of a toss-up, but I can't go past my boy Kenny Tete. He's one of my favourite players, has been for a long time. I'm going to be devastated if he leaves this summer. And I as you say, I think that the strength of Palace is the right-hand side. So really, we probably should be looking at a player further forward that can do some damage. But I can't talk against Kenny Tete. Heart over head.
I would feel quite rough on Castagna for bringing Tete straight back in. Not going to lie, I think he has done a really solid shift. But like you said, that side it would be strong. But then Wilson, the way he came on off the bench, he played brilliantly in that away game when we won 2-0. He was superb off the bench, and then just before his injury, he was absolutely flying. So yeah, it's a difficult one. That.
Do you know what, as well? I wouldn't rule out Nelson. I know we're going around all of them now, but remember against Palace away, I think he missed a couple of chances, but he was causing them all sorts of problems on the left. And he was kind of the quick feet that might be able to, even if they do try and outnumber us, he's the kind of player I think that can beat one or two, which I don't know if anyone else in our team has that ability that can go past one or two.
Sort of like got the technique of some of our more like drifty insidey wingers, but the pace of like Adama. He's like a combination of the two, isn't he? But we just never saw the full package for long enough. I will just say, if you had Wilson, Muniz and Sess on the bench, that's a guaranteed goal off the bench. Yeah. They've scored so many goals off the bench this season. Yeah. Like it's like a cheat code.
Yeah, that is true. It would.
Do you think Smith Rowe would have stepped up more if Nelson was playing?
Maybe. They seem to like playing with each other, and like Smith Rowe seems to want to be the facilitator rather than the person who like takes the risk, runs beyond, and like Iwobi sort of does that. So there is like more of an overlap, I feel, between the way they play. Whereas that sort of slightly more direct running style of Nelson seems to suit Smith Rowe, didn't it? There seemed to be some connection there. It's a really tough one for Nelson, isn't it? Because like, what do you do if you're the club now? You've had absolutely no read on him for ages. It's a really, really tricky one. I don't know if you've ever experienced that when you're playing, like Mary, for Fulham, but like it's like, how do you judge a player that's been injured for that long?
Yeah, I mean it's rough. Luckily, Nelson's got a CV on him, hasn't he? And we know what he's like, but it is tough for him. I think he would have had such a successful season, but we know what he's like. I think that's the difference is he's not like fresh. He's not a brand new player that's come in. So yeah, I think you can trust how he would play.
Mary, would you keep Nelson?
Yeah, I would keep him. I would keep him. I think he'd offer just that extra depth down the side, and I don't know what's going on with Willian, but Nelson would add. I love Willian, love him, but Nelson would add that depth, and he'd strengthen that side even more. Give us new options with where we play Iwobi. Like if Nelson was out there, we know Iwobi can play in many different positions. So yeah, I would keep him, and I think he'd be a really direct threat up in the top for us.
Kish, do you think it comes down to the price that Arsenal would want for this one?
100%. And you never quite know what like big clubs are going to say about players. Like sometimes they're like, okay, we accept it's time to move this guy on, and sometimes they're like, no, for PSR purposes, we want like £25 million, and you just don't really know what you're going to get. But I'm sure there'll be interest there. I mean, they went after him for a reason, even if it was late. There seems to be some chemistry with other players. So yeah, I don't think it's out of the question. But like you say, I think it's a negotiating game with Arsenal, isn't it? Let's see what they're thinking.
Yeah, and now, I mean, hamstring injuries, it's not ideal for a winger. You know, that once you kind of start getting hamstring injuries, it's the kind of injury that does come back. So, you know, that's a concern. I don't know. My problem is I kind of feel that we need a winger to bring in a winger this summer that's got a bit more of a goal threat than the current crop. And I'm not sure that's Nelson. The one weakness I thought in his game was he's kind of a very head down finisher, you know, and you know, he's not as composed. You know, the difference between him and Sessegnon in front of goal is just absolutely no comparison.
And we want to play Sess at left back.
Exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. I think if it was like 10 million, I'd take him because I just think there's potential there. If they want 20, 25, I'd be a bit nervous that we're not getting a player that's going to get goals for us and could potentially pick up injuries, I guess would be my view. But
could it end up being like a Leno where we get a really good deal and then
3 million?
He absolutely is flying. Like Leno's been one of our players of the season, so you never know. I can't see him getting back into the Arsenal team as such. So
yeah, fair enough. So there's no more questions, are there, Mary? I think that was all three today.
That was it, yeah.
So, okay, brilliant. So the only other thing I wanted to talk about tonight is Kish, you're a member of the Discord group that we have. Do you enjoy it on there?
Yeah, I'm in there. It's good. It's the place where I complained about my AI image for the promo for tonight's episode. No, really good. Nice. And look, it's just, I'm a big fan of any space that gets us slightly away from having my thoughts invaded by Elon Musk every time I try and tweet about Fulham. I love Twitter. I'm on Twitter. That's where I post my stuff. But yeah, it's nice to be in a safe Fulham space sometimes.
Absolutely. And okay, we will be back on Sunday to review the win against Palace, and we'll be thinking about who we're going to be playing next. Will it be Preston? Will it be Nottingham Forest in the semi-final at Wembley in a month's time? And we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, on Sunday. Of course, Mary, brilliant as always to have you. And let's go. Come on.
Let's absolutely go. Come on, you whites. Buzzing. It's soon coming around. And like you said, we'll be talking about like all the good things we did to win. But I've really enjoyed like listening to Kish and all. I've full respect for all your tactics that you've looked into. So really enjoyed listening to that today. And hopefully Marco's obviously listened as well, so that we've got two geniuses here prepping us for Saturday. But no, it's good, and I'm feeling. Do you know what? I feel more at ease now that we've chatted about the game. I felt quite nervous at the start when you said in the intro that we've got our quarterfinal game. It gave me a bit like goosebumps. I felt a bit of a shiver. I felt a bit sicky, and now I feel quite calm and excited about it. So here we go.
Yeah. And Kish, such a treat to have you on. Really grateful. And thanks for all your input. I mean, it's just great to hear your view on how we can approach this one. And, and I know you've got to be doing a video right tomorrow too on releasing a video on X.
Yeah, I've got an edit to do after this, but video on YouTube, which will be breaking down some of the themes of what we talked about. You had a preview on the screen grabs there, and yeah, thanks for having me. And I think I might be already asleep because I think Fulham legend Mary Southgate just called me a genius, so I'm made up. That's gonna keep me happy, even if we do find ourselves 1-0 down early against Palace. So that's nice.
I'll be waiting for you to put up the tactics board from H5 and getting those players ready for the next fight. You've got the plan B.
Gotta have a plan. Always have a plan B.
That'd be so good if you brought like a big poster to the game. You could just draw on it and tell Marco what he did.
There are limits even to my nonsense. Can you imagine? Like, who is this weird internet person who's telling me to flip the wingers over?
Listen, if you want to increase your followers, do that, because if that gets picked up on the cameras, that'll go viral.
You know what? It's not the worst idea. Maybe if like, you know, when we get into that bit of the Premier League season where we're allegedly on the beach because it's all like chilled out, maybe that's the time to do it.
Yeah.
We'll be in full support of you.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun.
And look, thanks to everyone for joining. Everyone in the comments. We are all excited and looking forward to the win on Saturday, and everyone that's followed along on YouTube. And yeah, nothing more to say than come on, you Whites. Mary, can you see us out?
Yeah, see you all Saturday. You Whites.